Hello, hello. Welcome to Growth Season, family. We are back, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to have my friend Elroy Byam on the program today. Listen, you guys, just buckle in, because if this is anything like the conversations that we've had in the past, you are going to be touched. You're going to be encouraged, and you're going to have an opportunity to see things through a beautiful and different lens. You guys are going to walk away encouraged. I cannot wait to get into this. Elroy, you are a television producer. You're an
Yep.
author. You are a man of incredible creative talent. I will say that because I know you're too humble to say this. And you are a husband. And there are a lot of exciting things going on in your life right now. I just want to say welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan, for having me in this space. I'm really glad to be here.
Right. I just, it's an opportunity to sit and speak to somebody that I admire. So I'm honored that you're here with me. And I don't mean that in a form of flattery. Folks, please take me seriously when I say that Elroy has had an amazing impact on my life. If you listen to the first episode of Growth Season, you would have heard me thank a few folks at the end. Elroy is one of those names. And sir, listen, I'm just going to plug it right away because I have been reading this book for the last few days, and I'm so excited to get into this. We're going to get a little background on you first, touch on your story, but this is a work of art, and I am truly appreciative. You know, in an Audible world, which I am one of those people, to have a book in my hands that I couldn't put down was a true blessing. You talk about a lot of things that I want to get into, but Elroy, first, could you just give our community a little bit of background? Who is Elroy? Where do you come from? What are you doing these days?
Sure. Hey, what's up, community? Growth Season community. My name is Elroy Byam. I'm a producer at a faith-based network in Maryland. I am, what am I? Creative. I love creativity. I love innovation. I hail from New York, New York, more specifically Harlem, New York, Harlem Stand Up. My mom was a private school teacher at a school that is now no longer open, but a private school in Gramercy. So I feel like I kind of split my growing up between like Harlem and then downtown New York, just heavily exposed to multiple creative worlds
Yeah.
and learning literally about people from all around the world at a very early age. And so just excited to see where the journey from back then has led me now, and how I can, use some of that backstory to still connect with people around the world, and to continue to build relationships from there.
Yes, I love it. And, I think it's one of the most beautiful things about having a diverse atmosphere when you're growing up. You do have an opportunity to comprehend or at least to experience other people's perspectives, other people's stories. And it's something that I feel that you are particularly good at, which is connecting to just about anyone. You seem like if we were going to do the Strengths Finder developer, and I say this to a lot of the guests on Growth Season, that developer is in there. Now, you could probably rattle your top five, Elroy, for the Strengths Finder test. If you don't know what that is, guys, just go ahead and Google it. It's pretty awesome. But the development of others, you have an ability to plant yourself in front of someone when you're listening to them. So you have a gift at helping others to feel heard as well. So growing up, I guess my first question would be, growing up in such a diverse area, was there conflict between two worlds? Was there something in your life that drove you to understand others in a different way, to seek out their story and their development?
Uh, yeah, it's funny you should say that. I feel like I grew up in what I now would call a United Nations school. I mean, like I was the only African American in my class for years, and imagine that. Somebody coming from Harlem that predominantly African American, and my parents are West Indian American. So I'm first generation American. So my parents are coming from the island of Antigua in the West Indies.
Hmm.
So they're bringing their culture, but at the same time, I'm trying to fit in in a program with tons of other cultures from all around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, in my class there were students from Israel, students from South Africa, students from that came from parents came from the Philippines,
Mhm.
Hungary, and so you're literally trying to find out where do you fit in with the world, but at the same time you're kind of day trading on culture, on language, on ideas, and like I said, you're learning to value people from a very early age. Did that mean everything was always cookies and cream? No. For a long time, I was always wondering, well, where's my place in this world? Like where do I fit in here? I used to wonder sometimes when I take pictures with some of my friends whose skin was a little bit fairer than mine, if you will. I was like, where are my red eyes in the pic, right? Like I was always looking for the similarities, but
Yes.
I would often spot the differences. But
Mhm.
I have grown to very much embrace those differences. Imagine this, right? Guy from Harlem, and the first two CDs that he buys is a Savage Garden CD and a Chumbawamba CD. Okay, so imagine that, right? Just to give you
I
context,
feel
and this
old
is
all of a sudden.
I'm telling you, I'm kind of dating myself a little bit, but I could rifle off like every track, at least on the Savage Garden one. The Chumbawamba one, you gotta give me some more time.
Right.
But yeah, like that's how eclectic my world was. And so imagine me going from, well, what I consider at the time, going from being the only black kid in my class to being the only white kid in my class. Because what happens is, by the time I had passed sixth grade, my mom was getting ready to send me to a zone school. I had no idea what a zone school was, but I had noticed that the zone school it's the school in your community, it's the school in your zip code. So I went through a culture shock in my own community, probably at around maybe the age of like 9 or 10.
Your
I'm like,
experience up until that point had been so different.
extremely different,
Yeah.
extremely different.
Tell me more.
um you know it was like summers in Maine, or going off to Woodstock, going out hiking. Like these are all the things that I was not doing in the city, because my mom would often take us, with some of our friends and their parents, like off, whether it was weekends or extended holiday vacations. Like we were off, kind of just like learning about the world. Granted, I was invested in my community. I knew some of the kids on my block. I'd bike ride with some of them and everything. And I'd go to church a few blocks away. So, I was still connected to the community in a sense, but I realized there was still so much more to learn, and because of my lack of understanding of the community, I had to pay for that as well.
I
Second day,
read some of
second day.
that in the book. Can't to
Oh
finish what you were going to say there. We'll touch on it in a second here.
yeah, yeah.
So you were saying second day.
Oh yeah. So second day at school, like I go to this school, this zone school. Second day of school, this kid doesn't even know me, and I don't know him from Adam. Just comes and just punches me dead in my face. And I'm like, what? Like, we didn't even say hi. Like, what's going on? Like, why is this? And I come home,
Why?
crying to my mother. And I'm like, and my mom is there just like I don't know what to tell you, So there, I felt like I was often going in a place just completely exposed. There was no like major layer of protection, no older cousin that I could go and sick on the bad guys or what have you.
Hmm.
But in a sense, I had to go through it in order to grow, and I'm glad I did. I wouldn't change that experience for the world now. Like maybe it traumatized me in some sense, but I'm extremely grateful because it allowed me to see where it allowed me to see my pain points, and then it allowed me to see maybe some of the pain points in others, like later on. I would not have known it then, but knowing it now, it gives me a greater understanding of what people often go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times our struggles can end up serving us and serving others depending upon how we want to embrace them at a certain point. It doesn't mean it's not hard. I mean, you're just a kid,
Yep.
and you're like, what did
Yep.
I do wrong? Do you feel like, I mean, and since it's growth season, we often talk about growth process, and really the point of the podcast is to help others understand that shame is not necessary, but the growth process is messy sometimes. And as you're growing and going through this, Elroy, did you find that you needed to, or felt like you needed to do a certain thing or be a certain way so that you weren't getting popped in the face again? I mean, how did you protect yourself? How did you layer whatever you needed to do to feel safe in that environment?
You've got to fit in. I when I tell you I was heavily immersing myself into my culture as far as I could, because I'd take my mom to the store and say, "Mom, can you please buy me these pair of Nikes? Can you please buy me
Mm.
these Timberlands?" I had no idea. Like my mom was not buying any of these brands prior to, and so I was like, "Please, please, please." And so I know she felt it for me, but I remember very specifically I had some orange boots, and it's funny. I just saw the picture about a week ago. My wife is making me clean up the basement because, Lord of mercy, my mom brought all my stuff from New York down to where I am now. I'm cleaning up the basement, and I find this picture of me in sixth grade. And for some reason, in middle school, I was always in the same spot in every picture. Didn't matter what school, what class, they always have me in the same spot, bottom right. And in this particular bottom right picture, I had on these orange boots that I was just wearing every day. So I pretend that they were Timberlands because I guess that was the brand you had to wear at the time.
Right.
Boy, did I get made fun of for those orange boots. But what I ultimately learned was, I had to change my language. Like I said, like I couldn't just go up and say, "Hey, what's up, guys?" Like it was like, what? Like you're in a different community. There's a different language. And so I had to learn how to yo, what's up? Like I literally had to learn how to be black pretty much. The music, remember, Savage Garden. I'm coming in to this class with Savage Garden and Chumbawamba, on the ones and twos. And so I literally had to
Mhm.
learn about new artists. And so Hot 97, shout out to Hot 97, New York's #1 hip hop station, by the way, whatever. They didn't pay me to say
Let's do that. Thank you.
that. But I literally, it got so crazy. I would listen to, even in my sleep, I was so desperate to be accepted by my community that even in my subliminal, I was trying to learn the language of the community
Yeah.
for that level of acceptance.
It's interesting too because I know that everybody's experience is different, but I have a feeling that in our community there are those of us, and I noticed you use the phrase in your book, and every day. How to Rediscover Yourself in Your Story by Elroy Byam. I noticed you use the phrase recovering people pleaser. And I feel like some of these struggles in a child's life can put us one direction or another to fight against it very hard or to decide to conform for the time being. And I'm no shame on either one of those. We do what we have to survive. But I mean, I remember moving from North Florida to Bremerton, Washington at one point, and I had a Southern accent and I talked like this, and they made fun of me so bad, I got rid of it. Right.
Mm.
And now I talk for a living. So it's like there's a purpose in the development and in the struggle that we've gone through. But I have a feeling that while your circumstances are incredibly individual, they resonate with so many who suppress either themselves or adopt new things so that they might fit in, so that maybe they won't get picked on or bullied, or so that they can stand their ground or declare their own space. um and I just I feel like as you're moving forward, you say in your book that you were in the architecture program for college, and then you move into communication and journalism instead. And guys, it's a really cool journey. Make sure you take a look at the book. You're stuck in the introduction, like you're like he's got you in the introduction. It's super good. So but as you're moving forward and now you find yourself as a television producer, your ability to adapt in these situations and pick up what other people might be thinking or feeling or how they're adapting, do you feel like that connects you to other people's stories, or how to develop and present a compelling storyline to others?
Oh, in a sense, I mean, it's funny, like if I dial back to the architecture program and I was trying to do a lot of the work, I think some people may even call it shadow work. And I was like, why specifically architecture? And I remember, I would often look through, yeah, these books. My mom, these magazines. My mom would get these magazines, and they were just, magazines from I don't know, random companies, but they would have bedding laid a certain way and living rooms laid out a certain way.
Mhm.
And I'm here in my apartment sharing a room with my sister, who's just loud all the time. And I'm just like, oh, come on, like I need a space of my own. And so I'd often have this sense of wonder, like, oh man, I would love to get away and design a place where I could just be at peace and I won't have to worry about screaming sisters or or my mom just telling me, oh, get out of the house, you're driving me crazy. And so it made me wonder, I'm like, well, if I'm struggling, then other people have to be struggling too. But at my age, I wasn't able to understand that yet. And so, but I realized, for instance, growing up in New York, you're rubbing shoulders with everyone. You're brushing shoulders with everyone. Granted, there are so many sub communities. You have Chinatown, Spanish Harlem,
Mm-hmm.
you have Jewish communities, you have African communities, you have Russian communities. And so there are a lot of these sub communities, but when you're moving around, you're still rubbing shoulders with everyone. And I think if you truly take the time for a moment to kind of get out of your world. And I know I say to, in a sense, take an exodus from all these other narratives. I'm going to reverse that for a minute. If you actually take the time to listen and look and see other people, hear the sounds of the street, you're going to hear, some of these other stories, these other struggles of people in these communities. And you realize, wow, in some way we may be different. Our parents may have come from different countries or whatever, but you're just like me. You're searching for the same thing, this level of acceptance, whether you're first gen or you've been here for 12, 13 generations. You're trying to say, ultimately, I'm here, I exist. And is there anyone out there that sees me, hears me, loves me, and is willing to give me what I need most right now?
Mm.
That isn't in the book, but that's the main kind of question. I'm here, I exist. And is there anyone out there that sees me, hears me, loves me, and is willing to give me what I need most right now? When you can understand that very core concept within yourself and with others, you can kind of get the core of where everyone else is communicating from.
I wonder if you're going to be able to start to understand that core of where other people are communicating from, like you say. And often you say people really are just looking for love, to be loved and accepted, to be heard. Um, I wonder, do you feel like when we're able to tap into that, that helps us to grow in our own space and in our own atmosphere?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. And I think it's hard, like I said, for us to understand others if we're suppressing our own pain, if we're not understanding where our own pain comes from as well. Like we have to truly take the time. This is why I say sometimes you have to get away, as
Hmm.
you venture further off into the book. The chapter called The Desert, where it's got to get quiet at some point the headphones must come off, and you can't block everything out with the noise. You kind of got to listen and figure out where are the pain points, or what are you really desiring at your core, and what is blocking you, what are the obstacles that are blocking you from advancing, from moving along. Are you hiding in other stories, you know?
Yes. Can we stop right there? Because here's something I want to read this to you guys. Listen, please take a chance to grab this book. Elroy, where can they buy this book?
You can check it out on Amazon. Just type in
Mhm.
and every day, and then type in my name after that.
Absolutely, you guys. And I proudly pump this book, let me tell you right now, because not just because I'm friends with Elroy, not for flattery's sake, but because just I've been sick over the last few days. I'll tell you that honestly. And I have been sitting and slowing down, sitting still because I can't do anything else. And I feel like God's really said, season enough. Like you've got to sit still for 5 seconds. And I start reading this book and I start reading things like, um, let me get this real quick, family. This is on page 13. It's in the very first chapter. It's called Lost. And it says, we act as if we live an accomplished life fulfilled with motivational quotes, travel pics, and smiling families. But under the pretense of our performance, for those of us who are people pleasers, wink, wink, lies an infantile cry for help, a need to be rescued from the constant need to matter. I just, oh, I think it is our heart's cry not to just matter, but to need to be rescued from that constant need. It like hounds us, like, what's what I'm looking for? Posts. We're compelled to post to everything. I mean, we just want to matter, and if I'm vulnerable and honest, I have had that desperate need in my life. I wanted to be smart enough, to be good enough, to show everybody that I'm smart enough and good enough. I just, in a desperate need. And as the Lord and as my, counseling, thank goodness for therapy, right?
Yep.
As I learn and grow and have a husband and a son that I want to inspire and just to be with, I find the Lord settling me. And it is a rescue from the constant need to matter.
Mm, mm, mm.
You also talk about on page 15, it's when we run away from our stories by hiding in other ones that we become lost. Tell me about this.
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Tell me about this. This is,
Oh, yeah.
oh
So
my.
I had to this was part of my own, self work where, I'm coming home, you might have a long day at work or even a long day at school, and then after that, sure, you want to wind down. And then, I write about this early in the chapter. The infantile part of you is pretty much saying, hey, mommy and daddy, tell me a story. Or you're pretty much asking the television now to tell you a story, your phone to tell you a story, Reddit to tell you a story,
Right?
Instagram to tell you a story. And so what we're
Anybody.
doing, huh?
Anybody. We're just reaching
Anybody,
out
right?
constantly, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much just saying, hey, like, I don't fully want to think about my day today. I don't want to think about what I went through. I want to hear about what somebody else went through. So maybe somehow it's going to give me the courage to have a better tomorrow, or overcome my obstacles tomorrow. So it's like, entertain me. Don't make me think about myself. Tell me a story. Um,
Yes. Yes. And what
and
what is it
hey,
about somebody else's story or that escape from having to think about our own? And you draw upon the phrase reflection, and you highlight it as very important. And there are many of us that will do just about anything we can in a when we're in a place in our growth or in our lives where we're just not there yet at looking at ourselves or looking at our day. But what is it about reflection that you find so important? Because you mention it multiple times as we begin the book.
I so just to be real, I remember even in my high school years, like I would have a lot of arguments like with my mom. My mom and I were just boom, boom, back and forth.
Hmm.
I'm trying to understand who I am. Like my parents are married. And my dad spent some of his time, in the West Indies, and then he'd come and spend some of the time, at home as well. But for most of the time, yeah, it was my mom and I just butting heads. And I was just like, man, like, why am I always arguing with my mom? And then I remember by the time I got to college, and yes, there was some space, some separation, right, from the culture, from the things, the habits and behaviors that I considered normal. Once there was some separation from my culture, I was able to reflect more. So I was just like, I would ask myself, why? Why am I arguing with my mom? Or why is my mother, responding to me in this way? Or why is my mother just responding in this way, period?
Yeah.
And then when I started to do some of that extra work, I would say, oh, well, maybe it's because X, Y, Z, or maybe it's because of, her upbringing, or maybe it's because of my need still for this level of validation and acceptance. And so when I started to do that, I saw it for what it was. And after I saw it for what it was, it lost a lot of power. So a lot of that need for me to, let's say, win an argument with my mom had no power anymore. So I was just like, if I saw that coming from my mom, I'd be like, all right, mom, you can have it. And to this day, it's still the same way. And this is years now, after college. Like if I see my mom getting ready to, just spice things up a bit, I'm like, go ahead, mom, you can have it. Like, because there's no need for me to quote unquote feel like I'm winning that argument. I'm just like, all right. I'm learning that same thing now with my wife. To be honest, I'm like, all right, dear, you can have it.
Is there a time where you lean into even respectfully so? Is there a time where you do feel like your voice is matters enough to press the point? Is there a part in your growth where even when it's not necessarily to win, but it's simply because you matter?
Absolutely. And I think that's something we fight for to this day. You see activists fighting for it in different spaces,
Yes.
whether it's refugees, whether it's people of color, whether it's children, like anyone that feels like underrepresented or
Hmm.
or voices that may be silenced. You often want to speak up. And so for me, I even trace that back to a part in my childhood where I had to make a decision, and it was an educational decision. This private school that I'd gone to, and my mom was teaching at, I was in kindergarten. And I remember I would go up to take first grade math, and every day, I was going up to take first grade math. And to continue the story, one day after the semester ended, the principal goes to my mom and is like, hey, would your son like to just continue in first grade for the rest of the year? So there was one grade,
Awesome.
or one class per grade. It was a small private school. And so I said yes. I didn't realize how much that decision at such a young age was going to affect me until I did some of the work. Because what I noticed was, after I made that decision, now I have left a community of people that were, in a sense, my age, at my level of learning. We're kind of all the same. And now I'm in a group of other people now who are at least a year older and would often remind me of it. They'd be like, well, you're 6, you know and they're 7, and then it's like, you're 9, and everybody's 10 in the double digits. You're 12, and everyone is already in their teenage years, you know. And so in my mind, it's like, man, I felt like this constant need to have to catch up or prove
Mm.
my worth to the group of people around me. But then I realized, you know what? At the end of the day, you know, and we've had this conversation before, but at the end of the day, we are all seeking acceptance
Mhm.
from people who are seeking acceptance from people who are seeking acceptance.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, isn't it just the truth? We can even seek acceptance by refusing to seek acceptance. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Like, I'm not going to perform for you. You're just going to have to
mhm,
like me the way I am. Like,
mhm,
amen.
mhm.
Amen. Okay. But still, it's yeah, kind of a backwards way of doing the same thing. But here's
Right.
what I'm hearing while you're talking. Imagine you are that, 6-year old and they're 7, you're kindergarten to first grade, right? So all of a sudden you've removed yourself from your comfort zone. You've removed
Mhm,
yourself from people who are maybe intellectually not pushing you any longer. If I didn't know better, I'd almost say you're like Ed Milet or Gary Vee 50 years later or 40 years later saying, guys, if you're the smartest one in the group, you're around the wrong people. You need a new group of friends. But when we're
mm,
kids, we don't know that.
right,
We don't have that ability as of yet. Some of us don't, to recognize the advantage. We just want to fit in instead of realizing that we've been catapulted into a growth opportunity,
right,
right?
right,
And so
right.
isn't it interesting how when we're children it seems like such a terrible burden, and now that we're adults we can't wait, sometimes those of us with growth mindsets, to move into a place where we're being spurred on by those around us,
Come on now.
you know?
Come on now. Yeah, and that's the space, you know, where I want to be in now. And the reason why I say this is because I spent most of my life in the other space. I spent most of my life kind of like, you know, kind of in the crowd, looking into the middle of the circle, like, all right, or pick me, or I have something to say, or does anybody see me? I'm here, you know. And then, but after a while, it's exhausting. It's exhausting trying to prove yourself or trying to perform for people. That's what I realized for myself. I'm like, it's exhausting. And I was like, I cannot spend the rest of my life waiting for a very specific group of people to pat me on the back and say, you
Mm,
know what, good job there, buddy. Now you're in. Like, I,
yes, and you know what, you bring me to one of my favorite coffee mug quotes, which is, set your goals, smash them, clap for yourself, and do it
mm,
again. Because
mm,
while we're waiting for everybody else to accept us and approve of us, we could be out there pursuing the things that drive our passion and drive our hearts and promote real, lasting, buoyant growth in our lives. One question for you. We've talked about people pleasing and performing, and you said it was exhausting. Something I've noticed with multiple performance orientated or people pleasing types is that there is an undergird of anger from having to feeling like we've had to perform even though nobody has asked us to. It's like we're prostituting ourselves. And
mm,
you actually use this phrase. Let me see if I can bounce it back. It's a little bit different, but you said we've prostituted our time to everyone and everything without realizing how much of a commodity our time is, as well as our hearts, our personality, our humor, our approval, everything. We're just prostituting ourselves to anybody who will tell us what we want to hear. Or,
right.
I mean, so do you find that there was anger underneath any of this for you?
I believe so. I believe so. And I think some of it at the time, you know, just to be honest, you know, may have even been directed towards my mom in some cases, and
Mm,
even towards my dad in some cases, maybe for him just not being there all the time, like me wishing he wasn't in the West Indies all the time, and him kind of just being in the home in the space, present more for
yeah.
sure. You know, and I had to do a lot of work to kind of release that anger. I think I'd often channel that anger into my poetry. We talk about performing, right? In college, I wrote a lot of poetry in high school, and throughout college. You know, and you know, whenever somebody asked and said, "Hey, you know, we need you to write on this particular topic or
Mm,
subject," I was glad to, because I think it was a way for me to kind of, you know, channel my anger in a different way. But yeah, I had to realize, I was like, oh, or you know, you probably are pretty angry, and you have to realize where the source of that anger, you know, is coming from. and there goes my camera. And I think it was coming from just a lack of, again, like feeling accepted, like the people in your life or in your circles that you want to just love you the most. You just want to maybe just hear a few words, or like you said, just hear a pat on the back, or just a well-intentioned hug, like you're okay, I got you, like you're wanted, you're loved, like. And that can be shown, not even just through words, but through actions, in a very special way. And sometimes the absence of that uh causes you to be angry.
Yeah.
And
I felt
yeah,
personally
but
like it
now,
was like, it's not working. Like, look at all the things that I'm doing to perform for this love. And it's not even working. I would just be so, uh, it's not working. I just remember feeling that because, some of my history is hello lights. Some of my history, you can see that there's a lot of anger involved, with the drugs and the alcohol and just a broken heart. But I had to at some point realize that my behavior was my own, and it was not serving me, and it wasn't loving anyone else well. Was there a place for you where you started to recognize, um something's got to change? What broke
yeah,
you out of the people pleasing?
I I think, like I said, when I started to do the acceptance concept in my head, like, wow, I'm seeking acceptance from a group of people who are seeking accept. Once I started to do that, I was just like, wow, like these folks that I'm trying to perform for, they're human just like me. They may be on a different level in the social chain in my mind, but they're human just like me. And once I see it that way, it equalizes the playing field, at least in my head. It equalized everything, and it allowed me to, when my interactions with them changed. It wasn't for a, well, let me perform for you so you can accept me, but it's more so just like, hey, let me literally just be me, or in a sense maybe provide value, not for your acceptance, but maybe just for the sake of providing value.
Hmm.
And by me doing that, that made me feel better.
Yeah, I like it. I really like how you talk about the fact that it would just level the playing field in your mind. And I really believe that each one of us has to find a perspective that helps us to be kind of settled in our shoes when we're standing in front of another person. It's been a lifelong journey for me. I'm getting there. Our conversations have helped with that immensely. And I kind of wish that, and we've said this many times, you and me and another friend of ours, that we wished we had these conversations recorded because they're just so meaningful. There's something beautiful about being able to be honest with another person. My favorite quote, and I'll paraphrase, is, "Oh, the comfort, the inexpressible comfort of having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but to lay them out just as they are, chaff and grain alike." Um,
Mm,
Knowing that a friend, a true friend, will take and keep what's worth keeping, and with the breath of kindness blow the rest away.
mm,
To be able
mm.
to just kind of be in front of someone, and I'm not talking about putting your heart out for everyone, which is
Right,
another lesson for those of us who seek to please others, but
right,
to have a safe place where we're able to process, where we're able to practice this growth and practice our healthier boundaries. And
right.
I love it. And I can't help but wonder, Elroy, why story for you? How to rediscover yourself in your story? I mean, we could talk about your story, but why do you want others to rediscover themselves in their story?
For me, honestly, let me not say for me, but I think for those who are watching, for those who are listening, and I want to speak to you now. I, I truly feel like if you just take a moment, we live in a very fast-paced world now. Information overload,
Yeah.
expectation overload, and at some point it seems like we're always breaking somebody's expectations. We don't even have the capacity to be able to uh, have a certain level of intimacy with, beyond 150 people. I think they said it's scientific. Like once you go beyond 150 people, and so imagine you living in a world now in information overload, and not understanding that you just may be lost. Like you're trying to keep up for the sake of keeping up. You're trying to hit those next levels. You're trying to start that business, trying to start that podcast. Trying to
Yeah.
literally just be better, but it seems like you're not able to. For me, it was important to say, all right, slow down. I think it's Psalm 42:10 or 46:10. Don't fully quote me on that, but
Yeah, yeah.
God is literally saying, "Be still
Be
and
still.
know that I'm God," right? So even God is understanding when we're in a
Slow
rush. God
down,
is
man.
understanding when we're moving at such a fast pace that it's going beyond our human capacity to just be, and he's telling you, be still and know that I'm God. And
Mm,
so, not to uh in a sense, to paraphrase some of those words, it's pretty much saying, hey, be still for just a moment. Be still, understand what story is, and understand where you might be. What chapter are you in? The reason why I say and every day is, and I borrowed the concept
please.
from a guy named Ken Adams. They use it to do storytelling. Pixar uses it as one of their rules of storytelling. I learned it as an improv game in college, but it goes, once upon a time there was. So if we put you, John or Jane Doe, once upon a time, let's say Jane Doe, once upon a time there was a young woman named Jane Doe, and every day Jane would X, Y, Z. This is why I said storytelling is so important, because, and every day, Jane or John, what are you doing? What's the food that you're eating? Who are the people that you're hanging around with? What are the music? What kind of music are you listening to? What kind of television are you taking in? What kind of books are you reading? Where are you going? And every day, what are the habits and behaviors that you have repeated over and over again that you or some of the people around you have considered normal?
Hmm.
That is where you run that audit. That is where you self-reflect. Because what happens next in the narrative, in the storytelling spine, is called one day. And one day always comes. It is the interruption in your story. Sometimes it might be the Grim Reaper coming to collect for your behavior. Sometimes it might be somebody coming to bless you for
Mhm.
your good behavior that was done behind the scenes. But it is always going to be an interruption in your story. That's also, I think, what has helped ground me, because and every day is like, yes, you have an opportunity to change your habits, you have an opportunity to change your behavior, you have an opportunity to shift your culture. But always remember that one day comes, and you've got to be hopeful. One day, if you are in a very dark place and every day you're having negative thoughts and they're eating away at you and they're killing you inside, one day is going to come, and based on how you are responding to those events in your end every day, that one day can shift your perspective, shift your narrative, and shift your trajectory for the better.
So powerful. I mean, just listen, the implications of beginning to understand our own story so that we might be able to grab a hold of how we are going to respond, because one day will come. I love it. Response. There are many times on growth season we say that success in life is not dictated by what life gives you, but how you respond to what has been given. And it does not negate or diminish or minimize the pain that so many
Right,
people have gone through at all.
right,
But the
right.
question isn't how much it hurts, it's what are you going to do with it? So there's that
Mm,
pivot in the story, Elroy. What happens next?
mm. Well, at the end of the day, there's also a concept in the Bible about stewardship,
Hmm.
and it talks about your, and this isn't in the book, but your time, your talent, your temple, your treasure. Like, these are some of the things that you may have some power over, may have some responsibility over, I may have some control over, and how you utilize that can really help you for the next phase in your story. Like I said, one day comes, and based on how you are training in your end every day, that is how you're going to be able to navigate through your one day. I don't know what one day looks like for me next.
Yeah.
I one of my gifts and also my pain points is my ability to often see far ahead.
Hmm.
It saves me sometimes, or maybe safeguards me from some of the pain of the present. And I'm working on that, because sometimes you have to sit with the pain in the present. You got to sit with people in the pain in the present. But at the same time, for me, I'm able to also look ahead and say, one day it won't be like this anymore. Or one day, based on how I respond to my and every day, something can be better. So let's get real practical here, right?
Hmm.
Let's say somebody wants to start a business. Gary Vee, let's do this. A business about jelly beans. And, and maybe there aren't many jelly bean fanatics right now, but if you love jelly beans and every day you are on websites checking out jelly beans, the flavors, what flavors appeal to certain people, and every day you're jotting down these facts and statistics, one day you may create a business, a jelly bean business. Maybe the jelly beans are made from a particular product in this particular part of the world, and some of the proceeds are going back to serve some of the people in those communities. You are now starting to tell a better story,
Mm.
or moving yourself through that narrative based on what was happening every day. But it's important for you to know what you're doing every day. Most people don't. They'll respond and react to the things around them. They won't go places unless they know people that they know are going to be over there.
Hmm.
In my culture, it's like, it's the barbecue. It's like, oh, who's going to the barbecue, or who's going to be at the party? It's like, I'm not going if such and such ain't going,
Right.
or I ain't going to be here if such and such ain't going to be here. And so we'll often wait to see who or what is going to be in a space before we go. The hard part is with the innovators, with those that buy up the first properties on the monopoly board. They are the ones taking the risk. They're the ones saying, well, I don't know who's over at this party. I don't know who's over at this barbecue. But based on my mission, based on based on how I would like to serve the world, not necessarily serve myself, but based on how I would like to serve the world, I'm going to step into this space with courage, with responsibility. I'm going to step in with God on my side,
Yeah.
and we are going to make this story turn out for the better.
I love this. And I think it's such an amazing part of the growth process because we are going to get knocked down. I mean, if we're breathing, we're dealing with something, right? We've said it before. That's been part of our conversations historically, Elroy. But we're going to get knocked down. The question is, what are we going to do with that when we get knocked down? And then what sounds to me like what you're saying is that we happen to the world around us instead of letting the world around us happen to us,
That's right.
right?
That's right. If you are a creator, if there is a desire in your heart, and you're seeing it now, I'm loving seeing this new spring of entrepreneurs and
Mm.
writers and artists and podcasts and voices season. I'm loving seeing this new growth, a new birth of all these
Yes.
ideas coming into the world, and we're going to need it coming out of this
Oh,
pandemic.
and
We're
it's
going to need
coming
it.
out of
Um,
struggle, right? I mean, the roots
yes.
are going down deep. It's blooming new things out of struggle.
Right, right. And we need struggle in order to see new things grow. It's funny, and I'll say it, my wife and I were expecting. And it's funny because before I knew we were expecting, I was a plant daddy. I was learning how to be a plant daddy. I, well,
I love it.
we had some seeds from our wedding. We were married 7 years before,
Mm,
and we had given seeds out. Ironically enough, I know this podcast is called Growth Season.
right.
The theme for our wedding was "Let Love Grow," and so we gave everyone who'd gone to our wedding seeds, and we still have a box full of seeds, like tomato seeds and cucumber seeds and what have you. So we were like, "This is the year we're finally going to plant some tomato seeds." So plant some of these tomato seeds in the ground, and boy, was there struggle. I would go back every day and check, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm not seeing anything. Like, what is
Tomatoes.
going on?" Like, this is crazy. Like, why do I have to do this? And every day, I was going back to check and, and look at the soil and make sure I had it the right way so they're getting enough sunlight. One day, right? I saw these little sprouts. You talk about growth season. I saw these sprouts
Yeah.
just from these seeds, and man, these tomato plants shot up, and they shot up in such height and abundance that we had to take some of the original plants out from its original foundation and put them in a new one so those can continue to grow and bear good fruit and bless others. And we got a great crop from them. My wife just dug the plants out, actually probably just a couple hours ago, dug those plants out after we've reaped the harvest
Yeah.
from planting earlier on in the year. So I know I'm a little long in the tooth in this story, but
That's all right.
I say all that to say, like, you've got to go through some struggle. We must feel the strain before we can feel the strength. That's what working out is. But and I talk about in the book, there's good conflict and there's bad conflict. You got to push against that good conflict. Good conflict is when your alarm goes off, maybe 4:59, 5 a.m. in the morning,
I I
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to read this because you're hitting right where I had something I wanted to kind of draw out. It's on page 22, still in the first chapter. I've underlined so much stuff in this book, you guys. But it says, "Our search for freedom," and the word freedom just rings in my spirit. Our search for freedom demands a level of awareness that something in your story needs to shift. And I think that struggle provides that insight if we're willing to look at ourselves,
That's right.
right? So it provides that. It gives us vision to know that we can dream and grow into freedom. Also, you say clearing cache files helps free up space on your computer and can speed up performance. Like computers, sometimes we can have too many tabs open in our life at one time. We feel like we're missing out on events, so we make ourselves available for everything. Our brains, how are our brains supposed to perform at optimal levels when we don't take the time to clear the cache files? You could have stopped there, but you didn't. You said the cache files of everyone's expectations of us. I truly believe that trying to manage everyone else's expectations is a huge point of struggle, tying it back into struggle and growth. For so many of us, we break under the pressure of performing for everybody else's expectations of us. And I'll read this again. Our search for freedom demands a level of awareness that something in your story needs to shift. Sometimes we need to envision a new narrative in order to wriggle out from under the weight of an old one.
It's real. It's funny as you were saying that. I was thinking about a Christmas movie that my wife introduced me to. It's an old movie. It's called The Preacher's Wife,
Oh, yeah.
and the story. There's this pastor, in this community. I can't remember if it was Chicago or whatever, but everybody loves this pastor. Like the pastor baptized the kids and did so many helpful things for the community. Was helping young boys who were on trial and would go in and help other neighbors. Everybody loved this pastor. But when the pastor gets home, his wife is just like, "Hey, I need you." Like, I need you. Like, you've given yourself away to everybody else. It's like when you come home, like, you don't have enough time for me. You don't have enough time for your son. It's like, I need you. And it's tough because, this pastor, to everyone else, it's like he's meeting the needs. He's been a yes man,
Yeah.
or people pleaser, if you will, for everyone else, and it makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Sometimes people pleasing makes us feel good. We hate turning people down. We don't like rejection. It reminds us of how we were rejected,
Yeah.
either whether we were young or an adolescent or even currently.
Yeah, and when doing good things for people is okay. It's the question is, where is it coming from? Because we may be doing things for performance purposes and then have a regenerated portion of our heart and do the same exact activities, but it's coming from a different place in
Yeah.
our lives. And I think I'm understanding what you're saying. This gentleman was doing wonderful things, but the priorities were out of whack. Everybody had access to his time, and it brings me back to page 21. It says, not guarding your time on a long-term scale is one way to begin to lose yourself. As you begin to lose yourself, you can also lose the understanding of who you are, how well do you know yourself, and the role that you have in life's larger narratives. You just get lost in doing what everybody else wants you to do, and then you lose your story. And I think that that's where the book comes in, right? So that
Mhm.
we can glean some beautiful information, some good perspective. Now, Elroy, I got to ask you, if somebody feels like they've lost themselves in everybody else's stories, or they're just beginning to kind of wake up to what you're talking about, what would you say to them?
Well, first off, I would congratulate them on waking up.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You do need a level of awareness to really understand where you are and to understand that you may be lost. But what I would specifically say to them is, hey, the world needs you.
Mm.
But if everyone has access to you all the time, you cannot provide value in the best way that, let's say, maybe God wants you to. Even Jesus himself had to get away. There were many people that had needs, from the natural to the supernatural. But Jesus, as much as he wanted to heal the entire world, he needed moments of rest. And I think, if we can begin, one, to be able to set healthier boundaries within our time, within our temples, within our, what we do, and how we make ourselves available to others, it helps us to respect ourselves more.
Mm.
It helps provide more clarity, I think, in the bigger picture. That's one of the first things that I had to do. So I would tell them, hey, if you truly value yourself, if you truly love yourself, loving yourself is also, making yourself less available in the moment, so you can come back and serve them, in a greater way, later on.
Would
And so, but if we never come back for reflection, if we never come back for rest, if we never, carve out that time, we can't operate at our highest levels. Too many tabs open.
Too many tabs, too many cache files. Get rid of the temporary downloads.
That's right.
Elroy, I wonder, I just, I wonder, just this one portion of your book here. You say, tell me a story. You go through each of the chapters, just kind of a listen. If for one moment we can admit that we're lost and broken in a world of noise and narratives, we may have a chance to fix ourselves. So, how exactly do we fix ourselves? You go through each of the chapters and you say, chapter one, lost. We have to understand that we're lost. We have to understand story. Chapter two, we have to be grateful for the value of our time, which is incredibly important. Almost like, almost as if our no now is a better yes later, right?
Absolutely.
Is a better yes later. You go through each of these chapters, you end it with, tell me a story. And family, this is just the first chapter. I mean, listen, I didn't want to give away the whole book. Okay, so you guys are going to have to go out and get it. Tell me a story. You end it with this for the first chapter. No matter how you spin it, everyone loves a good story. This is the ongoing appetite of our brain. When we wake up and catch the news, when we're at work by the water cooler, when we're in transit on the way home, when we unwind with our friends, spouse, kids, and loved ones, when we're moments from closing our eyes for as long as our subconscious will let us, what we're really asking for is to tell me how someone like me got through their situation, so their struggle. Tell me how someone like you got through their situation so their struggle can give me the strength to get through mine. Elroy, tell me how you made it through your struggle so that you can give this community the strength to get through theirs.
To be honest, again, self-reflection.
Mm.
I got away from the culture, and sure, it cost me in a lot of ways. Time with friends, time with family. Even now, guarding my time, I had to get away from everything that I considered normal. My
Mm.
people pleasing, me spending time in a lot of, things that I love the most, whether it was, video games or, I don't know, like being on the phone, social media. Like I had to spend a lot less time, and I'm still doing it now. I'm not perfect. The journey continues.
Yeah,
Don't
thank
look at me
goodness.
and say, well, yeah, he's at the end of the story. He's. I'm just cycling through another one, and again, I won't, give the book away. But the way I'm getting through my story right now, to be honest, is understanding that I needed a change. There is a chapter, I believe it's in chapter, I think it's chapter 4 or 5,
Hmm.
and I call it the knowledge cycle. You'll see it. There are 4 A's, and I'll at least give them away quickly. It's almost like you're rounding the bases and swinging for the cycle, and you'll see it. Your first base is awareness. You got to be aware of what's going on. What is it that you want? Everyone desires something deep within their heart. What is it that you want? Financial, better body, a spouse,
Yeah.
better grades. What is it that you want? You got to be aware of that. And as you're aware, the next A is acquisition. You got to go acquire the information, or spend time with the people, or with the info, or in the area. You start to acquire these things based on what you're aware of. Then you can't. people call it analysis by paralysis
Ugh.
or paralysis by analysis. You got to get to the next A, which is application. You've
Mhm.
got to apply what you've learned. You got to apply what you've heard in growth season if you're going to grow.
Mhm.
And then after you apply it, this is where some people, some organizations, some families, some individuals mess up as well. They don't do the audit.
Mm.
They will go and do the things. They will apply what they've learned, but they won't audit and say, "Man, did this work? Was this effective?
Mhm.
Or did I mess up from doing this? Or what happened because of this?" And after you audit yourself, then you become aware.
Yeah, I was gonna say your audit sounds like you circle right back around. I love it. That's
It's a
so
never-ending.
powerful. Tell me one more time. You are aware, you are acquisition, and then you
Yep,
move to application and
yep,
then audit. I
correct.
love it. I love it. We're all about cycles here at growth season. I liken it to fall. I begin it in fall, winter, spring, and summer. And, when I had sent you an invitation to be here, I'd asked you a question. What season do you feel like your growth stage is in right now? And you said spring. Why spring?
So I love this. I actually love that question. I felt like I'll start back from fall really quick just to
Okay.
give backstory. Like fall was pretty much, you have your what do you call it, the hot boy summer, the hot girl summer, everything is all, fine and
Everything's
dandy
in
and
full
warm.
bloom. Woo!
But it's like after a while, like I said, one day something has to change. And so when the temperature starts to cool down, when the fire starts to crackle a little bit, you start reflecting on your year. You start reflecting on
Mhm.
your life. Uh, you know, um, are my habits and behaviors, whatever is going on right now, are the people around me, are
Mm.
is what I'm doing right now valid enough and valuable enough to push me forward in my narrative? And if it's not, then at some point you got to go through a cold winter. It's saying goodbye to whatever was lush in previous seasons. It's saying goodbye to whatever was in abundance for previous seasons. It's sometimes resting, resting from certain activities in order to prepare yourself. It's hibernating in a sense in
Mm.
order to prepare yourself for this next season. So for me, it's spring.
I love it.
I've gone through this winter, this cold winter, and sometimes your close ones may not even understand you're going through a winter, and they might say, you know what, you're being really cold towards me right now, but you're not being cold, you're
Hmm.
hibernating.
Hmm. You're
You're
like,
hibernating.
something,
It's
you've changed. You're like, that's the point.
That's the point. We're supposed to change. We're human beings. Oh my goodness. If you invested in stocks and your stock was a flat line all the way like this, like
Then you need an
that's not a
audit.
healthy stock.
You need an
You gotta
audit to
audit.
coin your phrase.
You've got to audit. Like they're supposed to be ups and downs. Like it's on the market. It's exposed to the world, right? And so for me, spring, it's like it's this new birth. That's what it is. It's this new awakening. It's after coming out of this long slumber. The world isn't really as scary in this stage. You're opening your eyes. You're wiping the eye crust out of your eyes. You're getting rid of the morning breath,
Yeah.
and you're like, all right, you're in this new world. You feel young. You feel childlike, and you're like, all
Mhm.
right, world, come at me. What how are you serving me right now, but also how can I best serve you? So when summer comes,
Yeah,
we're just having a nice warm fuzzy time together.
I love
But
it.
again, not all of those seasons last forever.
They don't. And I love spring. I do. It's my second favorite. You and I share our seasonal favorite, which is autumn. Is another question I'd asked you. You said that autumn, and you said the bold colors, the crackling fire, like that sense of comfort. And I do. I really appreciate the way that you see. I feel like we're speaking the same language with the seasons. Those
Yep.
tender shoots sometimes in the spring, they need to be protected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we're in our toddler stage of walking for some of the new growth that we've got,
Yeah.
and before we're in full bloom, we want to maybe put some saran wrap over those seeds that are germinating,
Come
so
on
the
now.
birds can't come and get them.
Come on now. Protect me from the birds.
Don't snatch up my beautiful growth. Listen, Elroy, this has just been a beautiful time together. I thoroughly enjoy just listening to you tell your story and talk about other people. Um, if you could, if you could speak to somebody just as a last few words together, who is in the midst and sees the need for change, sees the need for awareness, for application, for acquisition, then application, and then eventually audit. But they're bogged down in maybe a little bit of shame, maybe that recognizing the need for something to change. They're a little bogged down and feeling a bit overwhelmed. If you could speak a word of encouragement to them, um, I really think it would have a powerful impact on the community.
Sure. If you're in a tough place right now, a dark place, a confusing place, a heavily weighted place right now, you're feeling
Mm,
a lot of weight, pain, guilt, shame, frustration, whatever it is. Understand that the greater being that there's a greater being, a creator, that has created you, not to fear, but to
mm,
love. And that's hard because you may have never been shown love in the right way
mm,
or in the proper way, or you may have never been spoken to in love. You may have never been communicated to in love in a healthy way. And so because of that, as my camera's gone off,
that's all right.
because of that, you're kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum. You're in a fear-based place, and I get it. I've been there too.
Mm,
I've been so afraid of just being, sometimes of just living, of being in spaces and circles. You want to be accepted, and you're just afraid. What I will say is that, and the Bible says this, there is no fear in love, my friends, because fear has to do with punishment. So it's either you are focused on punishing others, or you're focused on punishing yourself. There's a spirit of punishment there, and don't be trapped by it, because the Bible continues to say this. I think in First John, on chapter 4, that perfect love casts out all fear, like casts it out, almost as if it's some evil presence. It casts it out, and that's something that we can't fully do in human measure. If we're going to take this to a spiritual plane now, this is something that we truly have to ask God for,
yes.
because the human part of us, the cultural part of us, we like, we're ready to fight. Like, it's like, look, let's go, let's get it right.
Mhm.
But the peace that passes all understanding, this supernatural peace, this supernatural characteristic that God gives us, which is really love, is the greatest power in the world. It can help to triumph fear. There may be those around you that may be communicating to you out of a fear-based place.
Mm,
You yourself may be speaking to yourself out of a fear-based place, but I want to tell you right now, you can change that narrative. You can change what you say to yourself. You can change how you speak into your life and how you speak into others' lives. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so through the power of God, I'm speaking life into you today. No weapon formed against you will prosper. Let's start to speak promises into our lives. It does not mean that we're not going to go through troubles. God says it, in this world, we will have many troubles. We will have many troubles. But then he ends it by saying, but take heart, because I have overcome the world.
yes,
So
Elroy.
just know that the person who loves you with the fullness of and breadth and depth of his heart has overcome the world.
Mm,
All right. So put your faith in him.
yes. Amen. What a spirit of love. And I pray that you guys, Growth Season community, that you're encouraged by that. I know that this is directly from the heart of Elroy, but from the heart of God as well. If you're able to receive that today, I believe that it really will change your life. Don't punish yourself, as Elroy said. Don't speak negative things over yourself. Do we need to be self-aware? Yes. Do we need to take grip of things and decide to change something? Yes. But don't let shame overcome you, because guys, there is now therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Ask yourself, whose voice is this? And if
That's
it's
right.
not encouragement, and if it's not love, and if it's not spurring you on in growth, then it's not the one you want to listen to, whether it's your mom, your neighbor, your insides, your boss, whatever it is, guys. Hang on to what Elroy said to you. Know that you are loved, and know that in this place, in growth season, you've got a safe place. And we just want to advocate for your shame free, hear me, family, shame free
Mm,
growth. And remember, success is not determined by what you've been given, but by how you respond to what life has given you. You guys,
mm.
thanks for staying with us. Thanks for hanging out. Elroy Byam, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right. God bless, guys.